Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the program, and you're joining us now on our Facebook page as well, facebook.com/Salam Media, and via our YouTube channel at Salam Media. I would like to welcome to the program none other than the political editor at the News 24, Qaanitah Hunter. And for the next few moments, we are going to be looking at the situation out in the Kuruleni area, particularly with regards to tweets that have been sent out by the mayor of that particular metro in the Gauteng region, Mr. Mzwandile Masina. Assalamu alaikum, Qaanitah. Welcome to the program.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah so much for having me.
All right, now you've penned an article on the News 24 website talking about the mayor perhaps even wasting his time getting involved in worrying about the larger issues such as nationalization of South Africa's banks and the economy, while his region is, on the brink of becoming one of the epicenters of the virus in South Africa. What was your thinking behind penning that article?
So there was a lot of controversy that emerged as a result of Mzwandile Masina's tweets around him agreeing with Julius Malema, the EFF leader, that the economy, the white economy, should be left to collapse because it doesn't benefit the majority of South Africans. And this, he's known to say these things, and Julius Malema is known to say these things, but it obviously caught the attention of Lutuli House, the ANC's headquarters, and they were quite irate at Mzwandile Masina and his tweets, and they issued a statement to say that it creates policy confusion. And so what was interesting is that that the ANC has been scrambling during this coronavirus outbreak to try to come up with ways to reignite the economy, because the economy is 10 minutes away from getting bust. And so they're trying to come up with innovative ways to get investor confidence at a time where the entire world is hanging on to whatever investment that they can get, because the economies all over the world have collapsed as a result of COVID-19. But what happens is there's a political fallout that continues, and Masina threatens to resign and is portraying himself as this anti-white monopoly capital sort of hero. But it turns out that his day job is actually what's being neglected, and that's the fact that you have outbreaks in hospitals in the East Rand that's actually quite problematic, both in the private sector and in the public sector. NEHAO, which is a public sector union, has raised concern. Nurses have raised concern. Then you also have the fact that him telling Parliament, despite the fact that his tweet became the big issue in Parliament, that actually there's a 1.2 to 1.5 billion rand shortfall that they are projecting out of a 6.5 billion rand revenue. So that's a lot of money, which can affect jobs, which can affect services. And most importantly, if ratepayers don't pay, poor people are going to be affected.
Do you think there's, an underlying hand that's at play here in the political scenario, looking forward perhaps even to the collapse of the economy, so that the ANC ultimately can be removed from power and new forces can take over, and that this political dynamic taking place in our country, and COVID is providing that excuse perhaps for it to happen?
Yeah, I think that would be a little bit of a stretch, because I think that what I sort of reference in the article is that this grouping of the radical economic transformation is particularly people who were once loyal to former President Jacob Zuma and are now facing some sort of existential political crisis. Because how do you make noise? How do you stay relevant in a time where politics of the day is no longer as it were? You cannot mobilize people. You cannot scream and shout over things. People are literally worried about their lives, worried about their bread and butter. And so I do think that the EFF, for example, would gain from some sort of an economy falling, because it makes sense. But people in the ANC at the moment are deeply worried, because this autonomy that they have in the state, or the envision for the state having full control over a state pharmaceutical company or over the NHI, you can't do that if you have no economy, because if you have no economy, you have no resources in the state. So how do you then continue with your grand plans as the governing party when you can barely pay the bills. And so what's going to happen is, and that's where the party is really, really worrying, is that you're going to have a huge decline, not only in non-payment on a local government level, but you're going to have just people unemployed and not contributing to the tax of the country. And as a result, where does the state get money from? Because we know that the state is highly indebted. And at the same time, these same people, Azar, are the people who say that that the ANC government should not be approaching the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And that is a legitimate policy discussion, but you don't have that legitimate policy discussion at a time now where you've run out of options because money has been squandered. The state does not have the financial muscle it probably had 10 or 15 years ago. And so as a result, you ran out of options. You have to go to your Bretton Woods foundations for financing. Now you oppose that, but you also want the economy to fall. So where must the state get the funds to give everyone an unemployment grant? Where must the state get the resources to continue with its programs to assist the vulnerable and the poor? So the reality of it is that it's a contradiction, but more importantly, it is also a proxy political fight that we often miss.
Now, do you find it strange that Masina had found, or had aired his support to what Julius Malema was saying or his ideas? Do you think that came as a surprise to anybody?
Not at all, particularly because it's friends of convenience. 8 years ago, or 9 years ago, when Julius Malema was expelled from the party, people like Mzwandile Masina, opposed and clapped for Julius Malema being expelled for his views on nationalizations, etc. But the reality of it is that, it's politics of convenience. It makes sense now because at the moment, the ANC, there's no populism in the ANC. The ANC has been particularly quiet during this COVID-19 outbreak, particularly because its leaders have realized for the first time that they have no clue what's going to happen or what is currently happening. And that's what was both conceded by the president and by the health ministers, William Kize, in the sense that we've never been through this before. We cannot, no ideas of how we're going to reignite the economy or how we're going to put in place a universal health coverage under the national health insurance, for example. All of that's out the table right now because whatever we knew no longer exists. So now, as people clutch for relevance, you then have people bringing up debates around nationalization, where technically cannot happen in this economic situation. And so what happens is we think as outsiders that these are robust political debates, where it's a legitimate idea and nationalization may actually help the majority. And in another world it can. But the reality of it is that we now know time and time again that these policy discussions around land expropriation without compensation, around nationalization of the commanding heights of the economy, all of that is actually proxy political fights. It actually has nothing to do with actually expropriating the land. And when you see that disconnect and when you see that level of hypocrisy that exists, you then realize to say this is all noise. And actually you need to focus on what your day job is, which is running a metro, which is on the verge of a financial loss.
Finally, Qaanitah, just a bit of a digression, perhaps. The relevance of the EFF in what they are saying as a party through the COVID-19 crisis. There's been a couple of statements by Julius Malema on television. Long speeches have been given, but beyond that, there hasn't been much political activity, I would say. Do you think they're struggling to remain relevant under these circumstances?
I think that there is a crisis for all political parties, but the silence, the relative silence of Julius Malema and the EFF, even in criticizing government's lockdown regulations, has been quite interesting. They have been more supportive of Cyril Ramaphosa and his executive's decisions in terms of the lockdown than other political parties like the DA. But I do think that it is a situation where, number one, political parties no longer are going to have the funding that they once had. So that obviously affects a lot of things. The second thing is that how do you navigate and how do you mobilize in a time where you cannot gather any people, and your business model of the EFF is grouping together the poor and the disenfranchised, if it may. And so how then do you then mobilize people, besides sitting on Twitter or talking through the media? And the reality of it is that, what do you say when you have no alternatives in a time where COVID-19 has literally torn apart the status quo of politics, as it were? And you see it quite evidently with the EFF. You even see it a little bit with the DA, where it sort of doesn't know how to navigate its way through this crisis, and as a result then takes the extreme where we're almost taking the Donald Trump-esque approach to the COVID-19, because it will then at least satisfy a core constituency. But with the EFF, how do you demand the state to do more when the state is doing all that it can in terms of trying to compensate people, that 350 rand, for example. And then another thing that's important to remember is that Cyril Ramaphosa in this crisis has proven to be to have quite a listening ear, which is not always a good thing, right? But obviously in his engagements with political parties, he has listened to their concerns. And I think that a large degree of, yes, Malema talked about the collapse of the economy and criticized government's decision to continue the ban on cigarettes but allow alcohol, for example. That's all as it may. But they haven't posed a serious opposition to what's currently happening in government. And I do think that a large degree that has to do with the fact that Ramaphosa has been quite engaging with opposition leaders, and has been at least hearing them out.
Qaanitah Hunter, political editor at thenews24.com. Jazakallah khair, and thank you so much for your time this morning. You go well, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Barakallah khair.